You're tuned in to Horror Slop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is Horror Slop. And now the first descent. One story to open the night. Just enough to crack the door and let something in.
The 3 Rules You Must Follow If Your Child is a Demon, by Lighthouse Horror. I noticed the birthmark on my son's neck that my wife Elizabeth never did. The numbers looked to be written in red ink, and were clear as day. "I'll show you what I'm referring to," I yelled, picking my son up and walking back over. "This." "There's nothing there," he said, not unkindly, as he gestured towards my son. When I looked back down at Joshua, his neck was completely normal. I'm so sorry," I said awkwardly, placing my son back with my wife as she gave me an angry look that would have been even worse had she not still been partially doped up from the meds. Which brings me to my first rule. //. 5 years went by, and though my son seemed social and friendly enough around my wife and I, he was unable to make a single friend at school, even the teachers feeling a general uneasiness around him. "Is this Joshua's father?" he asked angrily. "Excuse me?" I interrupted. "Did you just make an accusation against my son?" "Joshua," I yelled downstairs, "get in here, now." A moment later his dark brown eyes were staring up innocently into mine. "I just got a call from the Jones." I evaluated the look in his eyes as he listened. My son's expression changed from innocent to cold. "It growled at me, so I killed it," he said matter-of-factly. "Go to your room, Joshua." "But Daddy, Now Joshua. Your mom and I are going to talk over what needs to be done." 2 days later, it wasn't just the Jones dog that went missing, it was their entire family. The husband, wife, and 2 little boys all up and vanished during the night. All the doors were locked from the inside, with no sign of a struggle or foul play. Their new Toyota Prius was still parked neatly in the driveway, and the keys were inside the ceramic fruit bowl on their kitchen table. But I had my theories. //. I'm ashamed to say that I was afraid to, and I wanted more than anything to pretend that none of this was really happening. Part of me did want to tell my wife Elizabeth my suspicions, but how could I? It was her son too, and most of what I felt was just that, feelings. "Elizabeth, can we talk for a second?" "David. I'm scared. There's something about." The 2 of us stared at each other for a moment, surprised yet not. "Where's your phone?" I asked. And then the music started, first quiet and almost imagined, and then louder. "Is that what I think it is?" I asked, swallowing nervously. "Chopin. Sonata No. 2. I looked back at her in disbelief. "I don't think he's our son. That's crazy, right?" I said nothing, only pulling her closer and trying desperately to block out the terrifying melody that was pushing its way into my mind. For a moment I thought of escaping through the window, but our bedroom was on the steeper side of our home. It was far too high to try and jump out of. Knock, knock. I searched for the right words as I tried to hide my fear. Stupidly, I said the first thing that came to mind. And then the voice continued, but this time it wasn't the voice of the little boy I had known for the past 6 years, it was much deeper. That depends. Am I still your son? You're our son, I said softly. A minute or so of the most terrifying silence followed, and then the familiar voice of a child returned. Good daddy. Now come out so we can eat some cake. Just remember to follow the rules, and maybe you'll even stay alive. At least that's what Joshua keeps telling me.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Life's Tough When Your Best Friend is a Serial Killer, by Sleepy Hollow 101. Nobody cared much at first, not even my own family. But as we got older and hit upper elementary, we became inseparable. That's when my parents began to worry. I don't think they worried about Tom so much. Despite the faults in his upbringing, he was always a good kid, very nice to me, and we played well together. They did, however, worry about his parents. To that end, we only ever hung out at school. Eventually, we made it to high school, and by that time everyone had accepted that we were best friends for life. My parents struggled with that, but eventually they relaxed. Sometimes, they'd even let Tom and me hang out around town, although they kept a close eye on us. What do I like about Tom? Everything. I like the way he twitches his nose before he sneezes, and the way he bounces on the balls of his feet when he's excited to tell me something. I like his brown, curly hair and the freckles dusting his cheeks. I like that he's the first person I see at school every day, and the last person I say goodbye to each night. Those feelings didn't change when the murders started happening. One day after school, David cornered Tom in the parking lot and punched him in the face. No warning, no reason, just punched him as hard as he could. He probably would have kept going, but I caught him in the act and raised hell about it, shouting for help and screaming at him. David took off and I dragged Tom to the nurse's office just as his eyes started to swell. He was extremely calm while the nurse treated him, but his silence was telling. He didn't stick around to hang out with me afterwards, he went straight home without saying a word. It wasn't a clean job by any means. He'd been stabbed multiple times in the stomach and had eventually bled to death. Everyone was in shock. Our town isn't exactly huge, and murders aren't commonplace. School was cancelled and the cops began an investigation. Unfortunately for David and his family, they had no idea what they were doing. You'd like to think that all cops are trained to handle a crime scene properly, but cops in a small town never really expect to have to do something like that. They barely gathered any evidence, and what they did manage to gather, they contaminated. There were rumors. Everyone at school knew that David had attacked Tom after school the day before. For a few days, people looked at Tom funny in the hallways. But David was a well-known bully, and Tom was far from the only kid that he harassed. It could have been anyone at school. Hell, it could have been anyone in town. David's bullshit wasn't confined to our school alone. As for Tom and me, well, we never talked about what happened to David. We just kept living our lives as normal, both of us silently glad that that fucker was dead. The case dragged on, but it became clear that the cops were never going to find who did it. Eventually, people got tired of talking about it, and we all moved on. The next murder occurred several months later. This time it was a girl from our school named Stephanie. She was strange, she was pretty and smart and sort of popular, but that was never enough for her. She always wanted more. If you ask me, I think she was really insecure. And she hated me. She had hated me ever since we were in 7th grade and I got the part in the school play that she'd wanted. She was really the only person who tried bullying me in school. For the most part, I didn't let it bother me. I ignored her petty crap and went on with my life. Tom never understood that. "Why don't you stand up to her?" he asked me once. "What's the point?" I shrugged. "She doesn't bother me that much anyway. Besides, ignoring her makes her even more angry." This time, it was a person with no obvious connection to Tom or to me. The town drunk, Lester, was found dead. Stabbed to death. He was a nuisance to everybody, especially the girls in town, who he liked to catcall and occasionally stalk, and the town is better for his absence. Even though Tom never had any dealings with Lester, he was called in and questioned by the police. This time around, Tom was bursting to talk to me about it. All of it. I wasn't quite sure why. Like I said, words were often unnecessary between us. Both of us knew where we stood, knew what was happening and why. But I care about Tom and, hell, if he really wanted to do this, we'd do it. "This doesn't change anything between us," I said. He shifted nervously beside me, and I tried to sound as sincere as I felt. "You're still my best friend. Everything is just like it was." I could sense him shake his head. "You know that's not true. Things can't go on like this for much longer." I bristled. "Why not? The cops here have no idea what they're doing, they'll never figure it out. People can talk all they want, without evidence, they can't do shit." We sat in silence for a few moments. I hated it, but he was right. Finally, I answered him. "Next time," he said, disapproval clear in his voice. "Life's tough when your best friend's a serial killer. Honestly, I don't know how Tom does it."
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Let me get this out of the way. This is a story about my childhood, a memory, one that just resurfaced, kicking and screaming to the forefront of my mind. I'd managed to forget about it, but the past always has a way of coming back around. I was a kid when the internet was new and cell phones were an expensive novelty. I didn't have as many distractions as modern children, but it wasn't for lack of trying. Rather than pay attention in class, I'd create my own distractions. It didn't take much. I was a daydreamer with a well-traveled imagination. The game didn't have a name. We figured if we didn't name it, it would be a lot harder to get caught. We didn't even use the word game, we referred to it as taking notes, just in case anyone overheard. A lot of the fun came from the secrecy, and the ninja moves we had to master in order to pass the note around unnoticed. We won when the note was passed around and came back to me. At recess, we'd read the note and have a good laugh. Sometimes we'd collectively make up one big story, or each share a joke. It all depended on what I wrote first. It was only a little bit of power, but it still went straight to my head. Suddenly, I was the most popular kid in class. I didn't need the daydreams, not like I used to. I remember when everything changed. I was roused from my reverie when Lydia jumped out of her seat, stumbling backwards and falling on her butt. Most of the class laughed at her expense, all of us immature enough to find it funny. No one disliked Lydia, she was a little chubby, but very sweet, but seeing anyone fall like that was bound to get a laugh. Every eye in the room watched the girl fumble and fret. Lydia was red-faced and sweaty as she quickly collected her papers off the floor and sat back down at her desk without a word. Her round cheeks quivered as she tried to compose herself, but the damage was already done. I turned my attention back to my note-taking, and before long, the note made its way back. I didn't look at it right away, I liked to be surprised at recess. The bell rang, and I cheerfully shuffled out the door for lunch. The class seemed quieter than usual as we filed out and headed for the cafeteria. Lydia stopped me in the hallway. Her face was still red and her eyes glossy with unshed tears. Lydia usually kept to herself. She participated in taking notes, but was shy and didn't usually socialize unless she had to. "Don't show the note at recess." Her hands gripped her twin braids. "Please." I wish I hadn't. She was pulling on her braids. I was worried she might pull them right off her head. The GA, taking notes isn't fun anymore. Not if it's going to be like this. Like what? My first thought was that someone drew boobs or wrote swears. Either of those options would have been scandalous to our 4th grade sensibilities. Lydia looked at the note I was unfolding, chewing on her bottom lip so hard it started to swell. It was Lydia. A drawing of her, so well drawn there could be no mistake. It was almost like looking at a black and white photograph, if not for the horizontal blue lines faintly visible beneath the expert pencil strokes. Once the full impact of the drawing hit me, I came back to my senses and crumpled the paper into a tight ball. "I won't show anyone." The game continued. I wasn't the only one who felt that way. Just days before, we were all laughing and smiling. Not anymore. Only about half the class waited eagerly for me at recess, the other half trickling in, heavy-footed with reluctance. It was as if they were here out of obligation. As I smoothed out the creased note, I almost wasn't surprised to see the new drawing. Brian's dimpled smile and freckled nose were unmistakable, his body positioned in a crouch beside a wall of flames, as though he were merely warming himself by a campfire, arms extended, hands rubbing together, charred skin flaking off with friction, peppering the fire with bits of blackened flesh. I pressed my hand over the drawing, covering it up, but it was too late, we'd already seen it. Even the drawing felt hot beneath my palm, words and bile competing in my throat as my eyes skimmed the rest of the note. Everything else was harmless, snippets of conversation and jokes, benign doodles. I recognized the handwriting, knew who wrote or doodled what. Everyone was accounted for, except for Lydia. The only addition I couldn't explain was that drawing, it shouldn't have been there. It was as though some malevolent presence had decided to include itself in our game, uninvited. When I began to trudge back to class reluctantly, I swear I heard a whisper. "Pass it on." Written in perfect cursive, handwriting that wasn't my own. I'd lost feeling in my hand, looking down at it, it felt somehow separate from me, detached, as though I were looking at someone else's hand. Calvin's portrait painted his body at the bottom of nightmare stairs, his body contorted, bent and broken in every unnatural direction, his arms and legs resembled the very stairs he must have fallen from. That day, there were 7 empty desks. Lucy was about to finish the 8th deadly game when Mrs. Knott swiveled around from the whiteboard and caught her slim wrist. Without hesitating, the teacher took the note out of her hand and began lecturing us about disrupting our learning environment. The lecture was worth it. By getting caught, Lucy had lost the game. Losing the game had freed us somehow, breaking whatever hold it had over us. We never played the game again. 7 students never returned to school. As children, we were spared any sort of explanation, and no one asked. I spent the rest of that year, and every year after that, as a serious student. I went back to being a loner with no friends or games of any kind. I didn't even go to recess, opting to work on homework or read books in the quiet solitude of the library instead. I didn't think about what happened for a long time, I moved on with my life. I stared down at the note on the counter, dirty notebook paper, folded into a square with frayed edges. I looked up at the woman, her mouth was moving soundlessly, but I could tell she was saying the same thing, over and over again. It. I recognized the woman, it was Mrs. Knott. There was no doubt about it. She hadn't aged well, her eyes dark and haunted, touched with madness, her features were haggard and pale, her body frail, as though she were made of papier-mâché. I had to take it. Although my right hand felt like it was filled with pins and needles, it was my choice to reach out and take it. The game had been my idea, the lives lost were my burden to bear, the curse could only end with me. Forgetting didn't make it go away. I haven't slept since, the note is on my desk, unopened. It doesn't matter, even if I don't look, the game is over. I don't even need to wonder who this game will claim next. Although I live alone, I haven't been alone since the note found its way back. From the corner of my eye, a dark, ungraspable shape asks, "Did you miss me?"
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
My Wife Dropped Our Baby, by Golden Abyss. Babe? I called out, and no response. I almost threw up, as I sat there watching my wife covered in blood, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Shut up," was all I said, "shut up and let me think." It wasn't us. My wife finally spoke, wiping her tears and standing up to me. She tried so hardly to not look down at the child in my arms. I secretly covered the wound with my hand, just so she didn't have to see what I did. We go somewhere far away, and we bury her. We can go to the park. We can say we looked away for 1 second. We can say she just disappeared. My wife continued. It sent shivers down my spine listening to her. We were just going to dump our child somewhere. We were just going to pretend I didn't see bits of her brain lying on the floor. It made me wonder, just for a second, if any of this was an accident at all. But before I knew it, we were driving. I didn't know where I was going, I just kept driving. My wife had bleached our whole house, with a story that I'm guessing she could tell police that she used bleach as a cleaner. I had no idea where she got those ideas, but I didn't question any of them. Why'd we stop? Let's just do it here. She shook her head at me in my state of shock, and went to grab our daughter. She was wrapped in a blanket from our trunk. I had let the shovel fall to the ground, I couldn't do it anymore. I felt sick. Before I knew it, my daughter was underground. Had been killed and hidden away. By her own parents. By her own mother. It was just an accident. It was just an accident. It was just an accident. Dad. The voice answered. I immediately hung the phone up.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
NASA is Trying to Kill Me, by Boy with a Loaf of Bread. My name is Dr. Adrian Reinhardt and I'm the last surviving member of the Kronos project team under the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. You've never heard about me or the project because for all intents and purposes we do not exist. But I'll be damned if NASA is going to let my colleagues' deaths be for nothing more than a classified folder collecting dust on a shelf. In 2004 a signal was detected from the Boötes Void, which is a vast span of nothingness in space nearly 1 billion light-years in diameter. And when I say there is nothing, I really mean nothing. The void contains absolutely no matter or even dark matter. It's essentially a definitive null zone in the universe devoid of anything, all except for a single continuous signal. We popped some champagne and enjoyed the event, as much as one could in a top-secret research facility under a shadow section of the United States government. For years that seemed to be the end of our little interstellar communications, but we still carried on with our research, always keeping at least one monitoring device locked on the targeted coordinates of the void. We had a few detected bursts of information that piqued out interests at the time from other regions of space, but nothing like heartbeat signal. This was the message. Dash. Dash dot. Translated in Morse code, goodbye. It was a reply to the message we sent nearly 11 years ago. Somehow a communication that should have transpired over a course of 1,400 million years took place in just 11. It didn't make any sense, it still doesn't. None of what was happening made any logical sense, and that wasn't even the ridiculous part. As soon as the transmission was received and translated, the empty space around the center of the void began to expand as the surrounding star system seemed to just blink out of existence. One by one, like a series of light bulbs being turned off, the stars began to go out. It was almost as if we were watching it occur in real time, which was another astronomical impossibility. You see, we can only observe as fast as light travels. Which means if we were watching the Boötes void that is 700 million light-years away, we would be seeing it as it was 700 million years ago. But now we were watching an event unfold that was absolutely cosmically impossible. The rate at which the stars were vanishing was expanding the void at a rate of nearly 5 million light-years a minute. I don't know how to describe it other than saying that the dark nothingness was growing faster than the speed of light itself, seemingly consuming and extinguishing everything in its path. All the while, that message just kept ringing throughout the room. I don't know how or why, but very quickly the implications of this flooded over the control center as my colleagues and I began to realize the gravity of this impossible event. At this rate, it will reach the solar system in a little under a year. Dr. Waterford sounded weak and hoarse. He exclaimed the obvious. We were all thinking the same thing. In a little under 360 days, this cosmic expanse would reach our very own star system. We of course didn't know what would happen when it did, but in astronomy, you always think of the worst. If the sun was somehow extinguished by the void as all the surrounding stars were, it would take a little under a year for the Earth to become an uninhabitable wasteland. That was of course, even if the planet wasn't completely consumed and absorbed into nothingness as well. It seemed to hit Dr. Redmond first as he leapt to his feet and made for a dashing sprint to the exit. Soon, everyone began to follow. Under normal circumstances you'd think that the man's cheese had finally slid off his metaphorical crackers. But given the current situation, given what we were witnessing, he may have been the most sensible one in that entire room. Then, just as a few others were making their way towards the exit, it suddenly dawned on me as well. The message, it must have been telling us and everything else in its path goodbye. Whatever was in the Boötes void was coming for us, coming for everything. At the time we really weren't thinking of the consequences of our actions. We weren't focused on the repercussions of suddenly jumping ship and going AWOL from a top-secret government program. The only thing racing in our mind was the sweeping wall of nothingness hurtling towards us faster than the speed of light. I went straight home and drowned myself in a bottle hoping to wake up the next morning to realize everything was just some crazy dream. I wouldn't be so lucky, of course. In truth I would come to find that out very quickly. You've got to run, Adrian. He yelled trying to catch his breath. I had wondered at the time what had caused him such physical exertion. I tried to get to go over to McGuire's house to discuss possible outcomes about the expansion, but when I got there his house was burning to ashes. And Cuthbert and Lethbridge won't answer their phones. And on top of all that, I think I'm being followed. Are you sure? I asked as I made my way to the bedroom window, searching for any sign of government hitmen. Yes, absolutely. I've driven around my block twice and now I'm on 58 South. There's been a black unmarked car following me the entire way. I could almost make out what were sniffles through the speaker. Listen, you've got to get the hell out of Dodge right now while you've still got a pot to piss in. If you half as smart as I know you are, then you'll dash. Those were the last words I heard from him before the signal gave out. I didn't need much more of a warning after that. I quickly got some things together and piled up into my Avalon and hit the highway. I've been on the run ever since then, dodging any sign of suspicion by moving state to state, county to county. All until now. I wish I could tell you in these final words that the governments of the world are working together to somehow try to stop this, but they know better. They know it's coming. And rather than be upfront with you, they want to hide it as long as possible. That's why there's been so much shit clogging the news and media here lately. They want total blanket coverage of so much chaos here on Earth, that way no one looks up to see the inevitable. Goodbye.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
Ma'am. They'll have like 1,000 reflective surfaces there, Eric. Plates, wine glasses, food trays. Thank you for understanding. We can go anywhere else though. Ma'am. I looked up. The handyman was standing in the hallway, waving me down. I followed him to my bathroom, but stopped at the threshold of the door when I saw the light was on inside. "Wanna join me in here?" "No, thank you." He furrowed his brow but didn't press me. Okay. Well, here's the deal, mirrors built into the wall. Ain't as simple as tucking down a painting, you know. Oh. And what did you say was wrong with it, exactly? Ain't like mirrors can stop working right, lest they're broken. No, it's not. I mean, it works fine. I'm just trying to do some remodeling. He stared at me, eyebrow cocked, and blinked once. Remodeling. Amicham. And that requires you to take down your bathroom mirror. Again, he sensed I didn't want to discuss it further and moved on. Well, we can schedule an appointment and I can take it down for you, but it ain't gonna be cheap and I'd need written permission from the owner of the building. I stared at the thing in defeat. I nodded. Thanks for coming by, I said, shutting the door and cutting him off. I heard him mumble, "Psycho," under his breath, and head off. I slumped up against the door and fell back down, grabbing my hair in fistfuls. I never should have rented this fucking place. On the counter where I'd left it, my phone buzzed again. I got up and checked. 3 messages from Eric. Ugh, fine. Maybe we can do something outside. Then, would that work? Then, you there? I typed in, "Sorry, I was talking to the maintenance guy. I'm okay." Then I plopped on the couch with cereal, opened up my laptop, and typed in DIY remove bathroom mirror. There was a YouTube video matching that, so I clicked on it, and leaned back with my breakfast. Then the screen went dark, and I saw the briefest possible reflection of myself. I got my bearings, slowed my breathing, and searched for the cause of the dead computer. Found it quickly enough, the charger wasn't plugged in. I fixed that, and forced myself to think of something, anything, else, while I cleaned up the milk and cereal. There was a zit. Huge. Ugly. Pulsating. Then the device booted back up, and the image was gone. "It's there," said the voice in my head. "Your mind is lying to you, Anna, but I'm not. It's there." I stood at the threshold of the bathroom for a long time before I walked inside, and I stood in front of the mirror even longer before turning the lights on. But I could only look at my reflection for a split second once the room was lit. I gasped and buried my face in my hands. "You do." How had I not seen it before? How long had I been walking around like that? Don't trust your mind. Trust me. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed some lemon juice, applied it to a cotton swab, and held that to my face for some time while I tried and failed to distract myself with some trashy TV. But when I got back to the bathroom, I was horrified at the results. What? How dash? You diseased bitch. Look at you. You think Eric wants to see you like this? I stopped. Looked up a bit. I felt the space between my eyebrows. It felt smooth. But the image didn't lie. Maybe it had been a while since I'd plucked. See? I show you who you truly are. I blinked away tears and scrambled through my drawers, tossing floss and tampons and cotton swabs and bandages to the floor, but I couldn't find any tweezers. Disorganized bitch. I screamed and ran back to my room, the place with no mirrors and the curtains always drawn closed, and fumbled around the drawers there. I did the same, tossed pens, notebooks, pills. My old diaries, buried at the bottom in dust. Got M. But I stopped cold, again, before I even started plucking. Tears. I hadn't noticed them either. Pathetic. The TV was on, but I was too distracted by my phone to pay any attention. Rhinoplasty options. Prices. Local doctors. Free consulting. Did I really want to get a nose job from a place that offers free consulting? Could I afford not to? On the TV, swimsuit models pranced around behind some before and after shots of a woman who'd lost 73 pounds on a new diet supplement. Another man had lost 41 pounds, and looked great. Come back to me. I'll show you who you are. No. Don't go there. Don't you dare. This is how you got fat in the first place. You trick yourself into thinking you're not. Then you go for another drink, a second slice, another piece of candy from the bowl. Look at you. You knew you shouldn't have had the ice cream last week. But you did it anyway. You fat bitch. In the kitchen, I cut a single piece of celery into 4 parts, and ate one. When I finished puking it up, I tossed the rest and glanced at the fridge. Empty it. Milk? What do you need milk for? Coffee, cereal. Things that make you fat. I tossed every fattening, disgusting thing in that fridge until it was empty. Spaghetti. Do you enjoy buying new and bigger pants every month? Trash it. Eating makes you fat. Soup too. Out. But not you. Look how ugly you look. Hooked nose. Unibrow. Yellow, crooked teeth. That big, fat gut. That's why you're off to the side. They didn't want you there at all, but they're too nice to say anything. I commented below one of the Facebook photos, delete this please. Liar. Liar. Why would anyone miss you? Wow. That sucks. I was really looking forward to seeing you tonight. You sure? I did. But in the mirror, the zit, now one of dozens, went nowhere. The zit, still visible. Fuck. Unibrow. Too ugly to cover up, no matter how hard I tried or how frequently I plucked. And I can't fix that nose with makeup, or my teeth, or my frizzled fucking hair, or how one eye is lower than the other, or how my cheeks are somehow too gaunt and too fat at the same time. I smeared the shit all over anyway. Obsessively. It mixed together. Formed layers. Crusted over. Just like you. I tossed the photo. I did. Rip it. It represents you. It is you. Tear it. I did that too, over and over until the biggest piece of it was hardly a centimeter wide. Screaming. Teeth grit. crying with rage and vicious hatred. I kicked the pile of torn photos, but smacked my toe against something solid and screamed. When I plopped back down on the bed, I picked it up. It was my old diary. I opened it, flipped through. Drawings. Scribbled notes, written by me as a child, then as a teen. Shut that. Focus. I kept reading. No. It's not you, 14-year-old me had written, on another page. It's something else. Something evil. No. The mirror doesn't lie. I don't lie. Your friends do. You do, to yourself. You're reading lies now. Does it? Do I? Come to me again, Anna. See what you are, through my eyes. Or are you afraid? Shut up. What did you say to me? I flipped to another page in the diary. Stop it. I screamed aloud. No mirrors, no monster. No mirrors, no monster. No mirrors, no monster. With resolve, I went into the living room and hurled my laptop into the TV. Both shattered. The TV fell over and slipped behind its stand with a crunch. In the mirror, the imposter mocked me. Did things I wasn't doing. It pretended to smear makeup on its face, like I'd done. I felt a powerful urge to do the same, but resisted. Then it pretended to gouge zits, to purge food. Suddenly I wanted more than anything to do both. But I didn't. I lifted the book. It stopped trying to puppet me and instead stared me down. The embodiment of all my insecurities. Its eyes were wild and wicked and full of hate. Do it, it mouthed. As usual, I heard it in my head. All at once I realized it sounded nothing at all like me. Like my own thoughts. Show your mettle. I screamed and hurled the book into the glass. Slam. It chipped. I picked the book up and did it again. Crack. The chip spidered, the imposter grinned. In the broken glass it looked even more distorted. More evil. I stumbled back, startled. Then it barked at me like a dog, over and over. I was paralyzed with fear. I shut my eyes. No mirrors, no monster. No mirrors, no monster. No mirrors, no monster. Am I? It cackled again. I collapsed, weeping. All my resolve, my determination, and I just. Mine. Have it. Stop it. Please. No. Hello. It was Eric. I perked up and opened my mouth to speak, to call out, but I couldn't. I looked down at a broken shard of glass. The imposter had covered its mouth. I couldn't scream. I heard Eric stop short. He must have seen the TV, smashed, and the bags of food still by the fridge. Look at me, said the imposter. You want him to see you like this? Do it, it mouthed. Pay for your worthlessness in blood. It mimed another slash, right across the wrist. I didn't even notice it, but I'd already extended my other wrist. Remember to whom it is you belong. Obey. Obey. I raised the shard to my wrist. Pressed the tip of the glass into my skin until it drew blood. Do it. End it. End me. Silence me. Silence it all. Oh, my God, he said. Your mom told me to check in on you. Oh, my God. Oh, God. I thought you were dead, said Eric. He sounded genuinely relieved. For some reason that surprised me. He leaned back, looked at the mess. Looked at me. Let's get you cleaned up, okay? Come on. Hey, he said. It's okay. You're okay. Come here. He started crying too, just a bit. I choose not to. Don't you defy me. You hear me? Whore. Harlot, worth less. I heard a whisper in my head. Then silence. My phone buzzed. It was Eric. I picked it up. Hey, you ready? Yeah, sorry. Doing makeup, I'll be right out. Look at me. Look. At. Me. I'm you. Nah. You're not. I capped the lipstick.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah. That's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
My son James was born 15 weeks early with stage 5 retinopathy of prematurity. This is a complicated way of saying that he was blind. Right from the beginning. Total blind. He can't even detect light. My son would live. He was breathing fine. All organs in order. He would have a normal life. But he couldn't see. I actually felt blessed. Blind people, of course, live long productive lives. And most importantly, they live. I have to admit. I didn't know much about how to raise a blind child. I didn't do as much research as I should have. For example, I've been told that I should have positively discussed his blindness from the very beginning. I should have said things like, remember James, because you can't see you're going to have to try that a little slower than mommy. Okay. I should have made him understand that he's missing a sense that most people have, but that it's okay. He can still find other ways to do things. But I didn't do any of those things. I ignored the issue. I tried too hard to shelter him from it. I would always think back to how delicate he looked the day he was born. So tiny. Like he was barely clinging to life. How the doctors told me, we'll try out best, that day, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. I was still just so happy James was with me that I couldn't bear telling him that he's different. Couldn't bear disappointing him. To explain that he's missing something so important. It's not that I kept James as a social recluse locked up in his bedroom or anything crazy like that. We would always go out to parks and beaches. Family was always over and interacting with James. They knew not to discuss the blindness issue. As best as I could, I was trying to give James a normal childhood. James is now 5 years old. And just yesterday, after all this time, the issue was finally brought up. I thought I had done such a great job of sheltering him. Of hiding him from his blindness. I thought he didn't know he was any different than most people. But then last night, just before his bedtime, James walked over and hugged me. I could tell he was very upset about something. He began sobbing in my shoulder. After a moment I quietly asked him, "What's wrong, James?" I was taken completely aback. I hadn't ever even rehearsed in my head what to say in this situation. I had thought this talk would be at least a year away. I didn't know what to do. Stuck on my heels, I responded the only way I knew how at that point. Something I had avoided for so long. The truth. No, James. I sighed. The doctors said that you will never be able to see. He cried in my arms for another minute or so. And then finally said, "Can you just bring me to bed, Mommy?" I agreed to. I lay him in his bed and told him, "You wait here a moment. Mommy has something for you." "What's this?" he asked. He smiled. "Also," I continued, "there are lots and lots of people in the world who can't see. Just like you. And there are plenty of things they learn which make their lives easier and more comfortable. Like Braille. You're going to start learning some of these new things right away, okay?" When I left his room, he looked in my general direction. He said in a much more upbeat voice than before, "Good night, Mommy." An NBSP. James seemed fine when he got up this morning. He went about his day as usual. After breakfast he was sitting on the couch listening to his favorite shows. I went upstairs to his bedroom and went through my usual routine of making his bed, gathering his laundry, etc. And then I noticed that the air vent cover seemed different. As though it had been taken off and hastily put back on. Had James been messing around in there? I decided to pull off the vent cover and look in. And there it was. A brown case. Approximately 8 by 12 inches. It was about 4 inches thick, with a small black handle on top. There was also a strange foreign language written on it. I had never seen it before. The first thing I noticed was the pendant. He had placed it in the box. Maybe for safekeeping. I picked it up and smiled. But then I noticed something else. "Mommy?" I heard from just outside the doorway. I quickly put the picture back in the box and then placed it in the air vent. "Coming, James." I remember putting James' lunch together. The door was locked all night and nobody else has a key. We're too high up for someone to come in through a window. I remember sitting down to eat my sandwich. But how could James have drawn it? The picture had far too much detail for someone who's been blind his whole life. The dead woman on the ground looks just like me. And he's never seen me before. He's never seen anything before. I remember watching James playing with his toys. Related 1. Related 4.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
Oncoming death is funny like that. Everyone thinks they're the exception, that they'll get out from whatever horrible situation the universe has thrust upon them. At least that's what I thought, as the life drained from my body. The world around me just faded to black, and before I knew it, I had just died. Then there was the void. At first it was little more than darkness, only broken by weird shapes and colors in the distance. As I regained a sense of surroundings, I was dragged towards a new world, one without pain, suffering, nor death. All there were people on a journey to different destinations. Whether they had all died like myself, or if they weren't born yet, I didn't know. All I knew was that I wasn't afraid anymore. The worries, the anxiety, and all my fears had been left behind. A light appeared in the distance, endlessly far away. I knew that would be my final destination, my final purpose in the brief life I'd led. Unfortunately, I never managed to get that far. "Hey, Rick, where the hell are you?" the second message read, sent at 10:23 p.m. "For fuck's sake, pick up the damn phone. Something happened to Danny." I immediately called back. My fingers were trembling both from anticipation, and from the memory of what had happened only a night ago. Even if my death had been little more than a nightmare, I knew for sure that I'd met up with my friends at the pub. The phone rang 3 times, then Jake picked up. "Rick, is that you? Where the hell are you?" Jake asked with a panicked, tired voice. "Danny got stabbed last night," Jake said without listening to my explanation. "Stabbed? How? Is he alright?" "He's still in surgery. They're only letting his wife know about." "Wait, here she comes." Jake put his phone down, but I could still hear the muffled sound of their discussion. Danny's wife seemed upset, but I couldn't make out the words. He's dead. Danny's dead." A year passed, and I hardly spoke to any of my friends. I started to get some semblance of normalcy in the wake of Danny's death, but that would all come to an end on the 18th of August, 2007. By the time day had given way to night, I'd almost finished the bottle. Even as a rather large guy, the alcohol had hit me hard. At around 9 o'clock, I just passed out in bed, awaiting a horrible hangover in the morning. "I thought you said no one would be home," a man stated angrily. Unfortunately, the man was a horrible shot. He'd aimed at my head, but had hit me in my throat instead. There I lay, drowning in my own blood as I desperately gasped for air. I couldn't crawl away, and I couldn't call for help. I died on my bedroom floor, on my own birthday, just as I had a year earlier. Once the life finally drained from my body, and the god-awful pain ceased, I was back in the world beyond. I walked through the same, colorful dimension that lay just on the edge of life. I admired the shapes and colors as they passed. In the distance, I saw a tree with branches stretching endlessly far from its trunk. From each branch dangled a person, real but not existing in our world. I wanted to visit them, but that wasn't my destination. Because just like before, I would awake in my own bed, unharmed by the events from the previous night. "Hello. Rick, it's Dad, your mother. She passed away last night." "How? What happened?" "If only I'd been there." "You don't know that." "But I did know, because the burglars weren't ever supposed to visit my parents' house. They were supposed to kill me. I had to come clean, I had to let him know the truth. But how could I?" "Dad, can we talk?" Naturally, he was skeptical at first. But then I told him about my mother. I didn't spare him any details. I told him where I'd gotten shot, that the door had been broken down, and that there were 2 robbers. Every detail matched perfectly down to the letter. What if it happens again? I figured that if I took control over my own fate, and killed myself outside of my own birthday, maybe I could prevent more people from dying. Alas, fate is a fickle bitch. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't end my own life. And so on, and so on. Each year I'd die, and a person close to me would take my place. I kept trying to find a way out, but fate wouldn't have it. Then, at midnight on my birthday, my heart just gave out. I was jolted awake in my own bed, and the sickness was little more than a distant memory. No response. I got out of bed, and called his name again. I was met with silence. I didn't have to call out a third time, I already knew what had happened. I carefully walked into his room, horrified at what I knew would come. The funeral came and went in a blur. The only noticeable thing was the missing seats from the people who had passed before him. Some of them had lived their own lives, and died as nature intended, but a number of them were supposed to live on, instead they'd just taken my place in death. I inherited a number of things from my father. Among them, I found a letter addressed to me. It looked rather worn, so I could tell he'd written it a long time ago. Dear Richard, today is your birthday, and it has officially been a year since your mother passed. While I miss her greatly, I'm thankful to still have you around. I know that if she was given the choice, she would want you to live. I feel the same way. We both know that I might one day take your place in death. Never doubt that I would happily give my life, if it means that you may live. You didn't choose this curse, so never blame yourself, just do what every person is supposed to, appreciate the people around you, because you never know which day might be their last. I love you, Dad. I've long since left town, living by myself in a cabin somewhere away from people. Hopefully, if I have no one left that cares for me, people will stop dying. At least until I can figure out not only how to die, but how to actually stay dead. I'm sorry.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
The first one chilled my blood. Evelyn bobbed her head back and forth while plugging a phone charger into an outlet in an overly dramatic manner. My heart sped as I watched her continue to film herself from inside what appeared to be a bathroom. The image of her face suddenly warped and shifted, and I realized then that the camera was filming from within the water of a bathtub. On the bottom of the image was the hashtag number liquid selfie. I swallowed the lump that grew in my throat as I watched Evelyn hold her hands over her head, before arching backward into a back bend over the knife. The blade's tip was mere centimeters from her spine, and she nearly slipped before laughing into the camera, finishing with a handstand and clearing the dangerous obstacle. 1.2M was on the bottom right of the screen under a heart icon, and I felt sweat trickle down my forehead when I realized what that meant. 1.2 million likes. 59.5k shares. At the bottom of this particular clip was the hashtag number blade backbend. I will not share her username for others to discover her account. I want those posts to get as little exposure as possible, though it seems too late as her followers are in the hundreds of thousands. There are extremely dangerous trends making the rounds on TikTok, and if you have a child, I'd strongly advise monitoring their activity. I've tried contacting their customer support to take down her account, but I've had no luck so far. Aside from that, there's nothing we can do. I trembled with pain and sadness when I learned about these dangerous and impossible posts. The threat to the safety of others is horrific, to say the least, but not as horrific as the reality of the situation I'm now witnessing. My wife and I have already been devastated with grief, so it's almost too much to bear. The fact of the matter is Evelyn died in a car accident back in April. These disturbing posts on her account began just a week and a half ago. Nearly 2 months after her death.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
My Wife Was Psychic for a Short While, by Abhishek. I love my wife, Lily, dearly. She has always been my best friend. I was devoid of love and affection for most of my life, until she came along 8 years ago. I have hopelessly been in love, ever since. We have been married for 5 years now. You know you love someone when you're ready to do anything for them. I'd do anything for Lily. If she said that the sky was red, it was red. If it wasn't, I'd paint it red. We had a beautiful daughter on March 28, 3 years ago. We named her Dorothy, after Lily's grandmother. I don't know. I have always kept it to myself, but it seems I have had this gift since my pregnancy. I didn't say anything about this to anyone. You don't have to believe me just yet. I didn't believe myself either. I just know that I have this gift now. I have these visions on looking at certain people and places, and they come true. They always come true. I have tried keeping this to myself, but after what I saw today, I had to let you know. Your mother is going to die tomorrow. Yes. Just go over there now. Don't ask any questions. My mother lived with her sisters upstate. It was a 4-hour drive away. I really hoped Lily was wrong, but I didn't want to take the risk. I went out. To this day, I cannot explain what happened next, but it certainly made me believe that my wife was psychic. When I was an hour away from her place, I received a call from my mother's sister telling me that my mother had slipped and fallen in the bathroom. She instantly died from the concussion. Things were all right for a while, and I'd like to believe that this was the time in our lives that we were truly happy. I loved Lily and my little beautiful daughter, Dorothy. Lily loved Dorothy and spent most of her time playing with her. They were both so adorable, it filled my heart with happiness every single day. We were happy, in love and raising a beautiful child. Her having a psychic gift was just a bonus, at that point. Last year, Dorothy died because of a heart condition that couldn't be remedied. Lily was devastated and so was I. It was the toughest and saddest time of our lives, and I knew that I had to be strong for her. I was her only shoulder to cry on. But most of the time, I broke down alone in rooms of silence, when I was sure she wasn't nearby. I couldn't ever get over that, and I knew Lily couldn't either. She spent her nights crying and clutching on to me. She spent her mornings waking up and crying. On most days, I tried to calm her down, but on the few days when my heart couldn't handle the unbearable pain of our loss, we held each other and cried. Our perfect life was over. Weeks passed by like this. Lily ate less, and stopped going out of the house altogether. The neighbor's dog. It died, she said. My gift is back. Do you understand what this means? I held her tightly and hugged her. For the first time since Dorothy passed away, she wasn't crying as soon as she woke up. Rather, she was happy. Her brother did die, and the police are still investigating his murder. Someone had apparently stabbed him in his throat and left him to die in his car. It might seem weird that most of my wife's predictions about people dying were being fulfilled by them being murdered. It's also a weird coincidence that these people were people she wasn't fond of. Rather, she strongly disliked them. So, I know what you're probably thinking. It's her. She's killing these people to fulfill her visions because after Dorothy's death, she has gone crazy. But I've always loved my wife. I know that whatever Lily is, she is not a killer and she isn't capable of doing this. Because I am. With your blood.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
My wife and I have lived in our house for around 5 years, and in that time we've probably been down into the cellar a handful of times. Our house is an old Victorian terrace house, and so the cellar is cold and damp. When we first moved in we kept wine and stuff down there, because my wife liked the idea of telling people we had a wine cellar, but it got annoying going down there every time so we stopped using it. There's only the two of us living here so we never really needed to use it for storage space. All the houses in our street have cellars, so I assumed it must be an old doorway leading through to next door's cellar. We decided that we'd go round to our neighbors tomorrow morning and tell him about the doorway, and suggesting we brick it up or something. I didn't really feel comfortable about having this access point into our house. My wife tried to look through the small circle hole in the door where the handle had been removed, but it was pitch black in there, so because we're nosy, we used the torch on her phone to peek through the hole. My wife looked first. She suddenly went still. We looked down the stairs with the torch. They weren't very long, and at the end of the stairway was another door. This one looked really old, wooden panels kept together with metal columns. It even had one of those metal ring handles. My wife thought we should probably talk with him before going down and left, but I was too curious about the whole thing. So I took the torch and went down. I tried the handle, and it was a bit stiff, but I was completely took by surprise that it opened. I shone the torch inside. It was a concrete room, similar looking to our cellar but smaller, and this was the only entrance or exit that I could see. The sound shook me out of my frozen state and I jumped back. As soon as I moved it was like I'd triggered something, and suddenly he moved so quick. He was running backwards towards me, his legs jerking around unnaturally. Writing this down it sounds kind of funny, but at the time it was utterly terrifying. I've never seen someone move that way before. I instinctively threw the torch at him, maybe I thought I could knock him out or something, I honestly don't know, and legged it back up the stairs, slamming the door shut behind me and running up the stairs leading out of the cellar, slamming that door shut too. I hesitated by the door, barricading it with my arm, trying to control my breathing and understand what I just witnessed. I heard the sound of the door push open in the cellar, and then what sounded like a huge lump of flesh dragging along the floor. I thought I began to hear what sounded like a low hissing noise, at which point I ran out of the house yelling my wife's name. She was stood on the front step of the neighbors, talking to him. I grabbed her and pulled her to the other side of the road, yelling for my neighbor to get away from the house.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
This Guy Didn't Stop Laughing for 10 Years, by NYSSASSYN. He ate while laughing. He defecated while laughing. He actually slept, though fitfully, awaking every hour or so, laughing. For a few of my co-workers, he was the only fun part of their day, but he terrified me. This was probably because I was the new guy, the green psych tech who still thought he could make a difference. Apparently most psych techs, psychiatric technicians, lose their compassion barometer after a while, and eventually a patient who spends every waking moment laughing is no longer disturbing because he seems harmless. To this day, my family still doesn't understand exactly what my role as a psych tech was. It's simple, keep crazy people from killing themselves or others. But what did I do all day on the job? Well, sometimes I sat in a chair watching some insane person lie on a bed in a small white room, and if they became agitated, I would lock the door. Sometimes I'd lead, art hour, and we'd paint, or make papier-mâché, no scissors allowed, of course. Sometimes I'd turn on a yoga video for exercise hour, and sometimes I pinned psychotic maniacs down so my coworkers could apply the restraints and the nurse would inject 2 milligrams of lorazepam right in their gluteus. I tried to see them as people, they are people, and their illness isn't the only thing that defines them, but in the acute psych ward, their illness is in full swing, and it's the only side that psych techs like me saw of them. They were mostly bipolar patients in the height of their manic phase, or schizophrenics having a mental break. The laughing guy, I'll call him Aaron, was a schizophrenic in his early 50s, with an atypical form of catatonia. Most catatonic schizophrenics will sit motionless, staring off for days without eating or sleeping. I recall one patient there who would stand in the middle of a room, maintaining an impossible pose for several days. When his catatonia subsided, this patient explained that during those frozen moments, he fully believed that if he moved, the world would end. But as in Aaron's case, his psychiatrist explained it to me, some catatonics don't remain motionless, but have repetitive, purposeless motions or actions, and Aaron's catatonic expression was laughing nonstop. Aaron had been in and out of the psych ward for years, alternating between the state mental hospital and the local hospital, for there were some legal stipulations that didn't allow him to stay in a long-term facility. Later I found out it was because no facility could handle his laughing for more than a few months at a time. When I started my job, Aaron had already been in this psych ward for over 3 months, but, according to some of the seasoned psych techs, he had been laughing like this for 10 years. Like I mentioned, most psych techs found him amusing, and more than once I saw a tech putting his arm around Aaron, laughing with him, mocking the way his high-pitched, almost screeching laugh nervously drowned out any conversation in the room. But Aaron took no notice to them when they did this. His eyes looked straight through anyone who faced him, and he kept pacing in place when a tech tried to hold him, like there was some motor inside him that never shut off. It grated on me. Only after a week of being there, I dreaded going up those elevators, greeted by his incessant laugh as I entered that dismal psych ward. Meeting Dr. Greenwald actually exceeded my expectations, and I admired how he valued every interaction, genuinely caring about each person in front of him, even lowly psych techs like me. The first time Dr. Greenwald met Aaron in the hospital, he recognized a few things. Aaron was a good-natured, caring guy who, not surprisingly, loved to laugh and make others laugh. Dr. Greenwald remembered him capturing audiences, telling the most hilarious stories that would have the whole room in fits. He hadn't had an easy life, but he weathered his burdens well, easily laughing at life ironies, both big and small. I guessed that something so tragic could make just about anybody snap. "What was his diagnosis when you met him, sir?" I asked. Dr. Greenwald stood up and patted me on the shoulder. He had stayed much longer than he expected to, and I slowly stood up watching him walk away. As he exited the secured door, he turned to me and said, Mortified, it suddenly washed over me, the realization nearly drowning me, there was something so intimate and familiar about Aaron. And I could never explain it to even myself how I saw a piece of me in that lifeless shell of a man, that laughing insane man.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I first noticed it when I was waiting for the bus. It was an easy decision. I stood in the muddy grass. The rain pattered on my skin, soaking my shirt. Rivulets ran down my forehead, dripping into my eyes. I reached to wipe them away. The rainwater felt different. It was mildly slippery, like a cross between water and oil. I wet my fingers and rolled them against each other, eyebrows knotted. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, really, I don't know what's going on," the man said. "Please, don't call anyone." John Allard, 45, was arrested for murdering his wife in their home on Tuesday night. The trial will be held. Last night, we had another storm. Rain pounded across the back door, lightning flashed across the purple sky. I stood out on the deck, under the awning of the house, just watching. "Molly, come out here. It's beautiful." Lines of lightning flashed, cracking and webbing across the purple clouds. "Nature's fireworks show," Molly always said. "You love thunderstorms," I called back. The rain picked up tempo, cutting into the awning. "Come out here and see it." She came to the door. "No. Come in and eat dinner with me," she said through the screen. But then a gust of wind blew through, sending a spray of raindrops into my face. "Sorry about that," I said, turning towards her. "Maybe I shouldn't have forced you out here, after all." Beads of blood stuck to her cheek. Molly?" "What?" I turned away, and picked up the phone. But they've gotten smarter. When I drive down Main Street in the rain, only a few stragglers remain. The rest stay inside. Well, they're smart enough to use their umbrellas.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
We received a message from outer space. It came from a 9-year-old girl, by Richard Saxon. Christina Koch. Nick Hague. Alexei Ovchinin. Alexander Skvortsov. Andrew Morgan. Luca Parmitano. Which is why we were so shocked when we received a transmission out of nowhere, one that didn't come from the ISS. "Hello?" the girl called out, on the brink of crying. "Hello, my name is Robert Jones, who am I speaking to?" "We're talking over a radio, Amy, that's why you can't see me." "How did you find this channel?" "It's cold, can you let me out?" she asked, ignoring my question. "I want to go home." "Amy, can you tell me where you are?" They were frantically trying to get us all to confess to the prank. We shot back with our own accusations, but as they sent us a live feed of their conversation with the girl, we were all baffled to hear that she was speaking in Russian. "I don't know where I am, it's dark, and I can't see anything." I paced around the office, not able to shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Thousands of questions whirled around inside my head, none of which I could reasonably explain using logic. "Amy?" I asked. I nodded for a second, forgetting she couldn't see me. "I don't know, my mommy took me to see a doctor, they put me in a machine, that they said they needed to take pictures of my brain, because my head always hurts," she cried. My boss gestured for my attention. "Figure out who she is," he whispered. "No, I can't feel my arms or legs," she said. "How old are you, Amy?" "Keeper, my name is Amy Keeper." Silence. Then, another question popped up in my mind, why me? "Amy, why did you want to speak to me?" I looked at my colleagues, they seemed equally shocked at her statement, confirming what I'd just heard. She continued crying, sobbing about wanting to go home. Within a minute without any response, we lost contact. Our colleague from Russia was furious, spouting platitudes that threatening with death, even as a prank, was going too far. Apparently they'd gotten a similar message from Amy. After a quick search, we found a single Amy Keeper, with age and recent hospital visit, that matched the person we'd just spoken to. She had passed away from a brain tumor, glioblastoma, 6 months ago. Her entire treatment history originating from a private hospital, one that has since ceased its operations, and closed down. Artifacts 040919. He'd been warned, just like myself, but the most disturbing thing isn't that she predicted my death, long after her own demise.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
I was hired by Disney to cut the hair of the It's a Small World dolls because their hair grows yearly, by Gusechp. Now, I'm unsure where I stand legally with this after signing an NDA, but those things only matter if you're alive, right? And number X200B. And number X200B. I post my work on Facebook and Instagram, as they have been the best way to reach clients, but when my niece, Laura, suggested I try and upload clips to TikTok, I saw an influx of interest in my handiwork. I was surprised to see how many people sat through a quick 1-minute clip of hair restoration or styling, and despite the negative stigma surrounding dolls, people loved it. Kids seemed to enjoy my guides, and I was thankful. And number X200B. In fact, Laura's suggestion was so helpful that I received a message requesting my phone number from the Disney in my business email, despite the address only being linked to my Facebook and Instagram. And number X200B. 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 What about your mom or sisters? I asked, afraid to overstep any boundaries. And number X200B. My mom passed away while I was super little. My dad's side of the family didn't really have many female relatives. I gave Louise a small smile, unsure what to say, and ultimately decided to change the topic. And number X200B. Who previously did the doll's hair? I asked just as Louise showed me how to open my room door. I thought that a place like Disney would have a permanent guy for it. The question must have surprised her because she fumbled with my card, and a red light flickered above the handle. And number X200B. Never met her. Her need to avoid eye contact made it very obvious she was lying. I found it peculiar that Disney didn't have a specific person for the role. I asked Mr. Darwin on the phone when he first called, but he just told me she transferred to the treasured staff department, but I was hoping to speak to her about how the dolls are usually treated. Louise tried the sensor again, and this time we were greeted by the clink of a door unlocking and a green light. The room was like a studio apartment, open-planned with the only walled-off area being the bathroom. It was cozy, and a kitchen meant I could cook rather than fattening myself up on expensive attraction food. And number X200B. When evening came, Louise guided me over to the ride. The incredibly catchy tune still played and got louder as we approached. She took me through the back entrance, which allowed me to access the dolls from the back. And number X200B. I can't. She said flatly. And number X200B. And number X200B. In the distance, on top of a crescent moon in the air, sat 3 dolls. In the center, a blonde doll's head moved right to left on a loop as if surveying the area. I had attempted to show the viewers, but I caught a looming Louise standing at the door to the section. Ms. Haberstro. Louise called out. She was no longer in her uniform, but her hair was still neatly tied back. She remained at the door to the attraction, almost like she refused to come in. I didn't blame her, though. One misstep, and you'd probably fall. I pulled my phone down and looked toward Louise. I swallowed a flat glob of spit back down to my throat and replied with a strained "MHM." No, Louise, I'm sorry. Let's go. And number X200B. And number X200B. Once again, Louise watched me from the door for a few moments. How many nights do you think it'll take you? She asked curiously. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. I moved the phone to point to other dolls and began work on another that needed a trim. Something as simple as a snip takes a lot of time, as you need to be careful. I'll have to ask for a ladder tomorrow. Maybe we will get a good view from up there. It's a live stream. And number X200B. End it. End it now. She was desperate. I quickly followed her word and closed the live. Is it off? I nodded. You can't do that. They're shy. Louise glanced up at the moon, and her eyes changed for a split second before she let out a small chuckle, indicating that she was joking. Hey, you head back. I need to close up, she smiled, and I obliged. Don't worry. I won't tell them. I managed to sleep through the day. The warm sun illuminated the room softly and protected me from anything looming in the shadows, and allowed my overreactive brain to relax. I had managed to wash up, feed myself and play on my phone for a bit until there was a knock at my door. And number X200B. And number X200B. Mr. Darwin asked me to escort you from now on. He beamed as if he knew I was looking at him, so I opened the door, and he handed me the doll profile book. You left this last night. And number X200B. The walk to the ride felt shorter than ever. Michael and I got along swimmingly, and he shared stories of his little sister's fascination with dolls, which she had gotten from their older sister. I was wrong to be suspicious of him. And number X200B. Hey, Michael. Do you know how to turn the music off? I tried. And number X200B. I decided not to work on the Moon dolls that session as the middle one had disappeared. Maybe for repairs. Pushing my luck, I set up another stream and started by showing the new section to the viewers. Strange. None of them are moving today. I noticed. It was true. The music was playing, however, the dolls were still, as if their IMBs had been pressed. I guess it makes it easier for me to work on them. And number X200B. And number X200B. I took the time to clear the smelly goop and tied the hair back, careful not to ruin the yarn. Just as I was about to switch to another doll, I noticed the liquid had started to seep out of one of her eyes. I quickly wiped it with a cloth, turning the material a maroon color. Maybe it's some sort of wood glue or something. I swapped to another doll which was dressed up as Alice from Alice in Wonderland, and pulled out the tag to show it. Number 32. So if I search through my book for 32, it'll show me a reference. I grinned. I can't show you, though, or I'll get into trouble. But I bet you can guess who she's meant to look like. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. Michael hummed, I'm not sure. Do you want to come and check with me? I know where the ride plans are. He mentioned. And number X200B. Like right now. With my rising viewage, I didn't want to start my stream too late. It felt like I had people expecting me for once. Michael took me to a backroom area for the ride. Somewhere I'd never expected to be. He rummaged around as if he knew what he should be looking for, but not where it was. I heard that they keep an updated plan from the Imagineers somewhere. Every other ride I've worked on had one. They're usually updated when there are any changes. He shuffled around until he got to the last drawer. What is it? I mean, it's cute. I struggle to place an opinion on it. Kind of strange. I don't know. And number X200B. My older sister used to love this ride. When she turned 18, I remember she got a Disney pass so she could come and look at all the dolls. I raised a brow, feeling like I was in the wrong place. I was only like 8 at the time. And number X200B. No, I guess I didn't check properly. And number X200B. When Michael came back, he took it upon himself to disinfect and bandage the wound. Despite everything, I was stuck staring at the cloth. And number X200B. And number X200B. No. Just a bit. Those big stains are from the dolls. I huffed. And number X200B. Why would dolls bleed? He asked, confused. I mean, I'm not a doll expert, but... And number X200B. It wasn't blood. It was a weird goop. It may have been glue or something reacting with the rusty mechanisms. And number X200B. Which dolls? He asked. And number X200B. And number X200B. She. The person before me. Louise. Michael rushed his words out. His panic had started to infect me. And number X200B. Look at it, although his voice was weak, his sentence was demanding, and I did as I was told. At first, it didn't make sense. The doll in front of me was frail-looking. Skinny, with less yarn than they give the rest. Sure, the hair color was the same, but that didn't mean anything. You're not suggesting. I trailed off. It was so ridiculous that I couldn't finish my sentence. I had caught on to part of his accusation even more now. And number X200B. And number X200B. I don't know. A shitty job, maybe. And number X200B. And number X200B. Stop. This is stupid. You can't destroy it. You have no proof. Michael stopped, lowered his arms and paused for a minute. He pulled the folded ride plan out of his pocket and opened it up. And number X200B. Do you remember which dolls had the goo? Circle them. And number X200B. I can't. I admitted, they're not on there. Only the moon one is. Michael followed me back to the doll portfolio. It was already open on Belladonna's, ready for her fix-up. And number X200B. I watched as a tan Michael turned pale as a sheet. His appearance became incredibly sickly, and his lack of reaction worried me. Finally, he shook out a breath and swallowed. He shakily handed me back the book and sat on the wet track. Michael began to sob into his knees aggressively, and once again, I stood in fright of the strange man. And number X200B. Donna. Donna. Donna, he sobbed. His voice cracked, and his words broke from his tears. Donna. Belladonna. I asked, and he only sobbed harder. I couldn't get an explanation out of him for a long time. We sat on the tracks, soaking our trousers in leftover chlorine residue. I had no idea how to deal with somebody so unbelievably upset that all I could do was take the scissors off of him, drop them and wait. My sister. Donna. She went missing here. My parents never told me what happened. But I became obsessed with her disappearance a few years back. The police never figured it out, and she apparently checked out of the park, so it wasn't the park's responsibility. They think they found her body, but her face was mangled. Her eyes, teeth and fingertips were missing. But it had her bracelet. My parents couldn't confirm it was her, but we buried it anyway. I wrapped my arm around him and pulled him into an embrace. His wet cheeks pressed against mine. And number X200B. Belladonna is what a cast member used to call her. I rewatched old home videos recently. He wasn't too old. He maybe had a few years on her. Probably was my age. Pretty Donna. And number X200B. And number X200B. Mom and Dad always said you'd go after anyone who gave you attention. You were born to be adored, he whispered and wiped her eyes with his sleeve. And number X200B. This was her favorite ride. He sobbed and embraced the doll, staining his uniform with the liquid. Michael and I both left in my car. However, my phone won't stop ringing. I have blocked Mr. Darwin's phone number, but I keep getting calls from random and unknown numbers. Michael told me not to answer. And number X200B.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
My Job is to Watch People Die, by Richard Saxon. Up until Thursday, the 6th of December, 2007, I had never considered myself anything out of the ordinary. As a teacher at the local high school, the best I could hope for was to aid in building our future. Though not an easy job, it was one I loved. Then, on the evening of the 6th, as I returned home after grading a bunch of unsatisfying essays, I received a text message from a hidden number. It contained nothing more than a time, a place, and a vaguely familiar, yet generic name. I let a brief smile slip, and kissed her on the forehead. She mumbled something incoherent in response, and I left the house. It was a dark journey through the barely illuminated skies of dawn. Though the sun still hadn't peeked up from the horizon, it still gave the sky a deep blue hue. A feeling of helplessness washed over me, as the fact of her imminent death became abundantly clear. I could do nothing but keep her company as the life drained from her body. Juliet. What's yours? I'm Alex. What were you doing all the way out here? No, Juliet, stay awake. I said it loud and with purpose, awakening her for just a moment. During the last few seconds of her life, she just stared into my eyes and whispered for the second time, "I'm sorry." Then she stopped breathing, and I could do nothing save wait for the ambulance to arrive. I felt numb, empty after having so futilely witnessed someone's life end suddenly, and unexpectedly. I returned home without going to work. Anna had the day off, and immediately noticed something was off about me. I broke down, and told her about the accident. I told her I'd watched that poor woman die, confused and afraid, and that I could do nothing to help. What I didn't tell her, was that a text message had told me to be there, not because she wouldn't believe me, but because something deep within me prevented me from uttering the words. That should have been the end of it. Weeks passed, and I slowly got over the trauma. Then, as I headed to work one cold morning in January of 2008, I received another message. It contained a time, a place, and a name, Jeremy Brooks. This time, the address was a local motel, only 5 minutes away. I wasted no time, and called an ambulance, and got in my car to drive there myself. Being far closer than the hospital, I arrived before the ambulance. I rushed inside the apartment complex, and barged in through the unlocked door. There, on the couch, sat a man I presumed to be Jeremy, pale as a sheet, and bleeding profusely from large gashes on each of his forearms. "Who are you?" he said as he fell over, too weak from blood loss to keep himself upright. "Come on, don't do this. Stay with me," I said as I looked for something better to wrap around his wound. Then, a light lit up in his eyes, as he was hit with the realization that he wanted to keep living. A wish that came to him all too late. Whatever trouble had led him to this stage, whatever had convinced him it would be better to leave Earth behind, he was wrong, and he knew it. By the time they had died, and the 8th number arrived, I had long since decided to just ignore them. Why expose myself to the harsh reality of death, if I could do nothing to help? Of course, that just happened to be the one time Anna was looking over some photos she'd taken of us together. The message interrupted her session, and she immediately started questioning me. Oddly enough, I'd shut off notifications, yet the message came to taunt me at the most inopportune time. "What's this?" she asked. "Alex, don't bullshit me. You've been acting weird for weeks." It was true, my random disappearances, my denial that anything had been wrong. I couldn't hide it any longer. While we stood there, with tears welling up in my eyes, someone knocked on the door. "We're here regarding the death of Juliet Florence, and we need to ask you some questions." Once I returned back home, I'd already missed the death of the 8th victim, whoever he was, he had died during my interrogation. I broke down, and told my wife everything. If the investigation ended up with evidence going wrongfully against me, I needed her to know the truth. When I finished talking, once all the facts were laid out on the table, she looked at me, her eyes glistening from tears forming in her eyes. That was it, no accusations, no follow-up questions regarding the validity of my story, just pure compassion. We kept talking throughout the night, where we would go from there, and how I'd dealt with watching all these people die. Then, as if a light bulb had been ignited between us, Anna came up with an idea. "What do you mean? Why else would I be sent their way just moments before their deaths? What if you're just supposed to be there, by their side? Maybe all you're meant to do, is to give them some comforting words as they pass. I mean, you've tried everything possible to save them, but in the end, wouldn't they just have died alone, if you weren't there?" I let her words sink in for a moment. It was an almost ludicrous idea, yet it gave me the most profound moment of peace. More bliss and hope than I'd felt in the past 2 months. She was right, there was no logic behind that feeling, but I knew it had to be true. I walked over to her small house, next to mine, and knocked on the door, fully aware that she'd be dead within the next couple of hours. She was a lonely woman, eager just to have someone to talk to, and I regretted not spending more time with her before. She'd always been friendly to me, offering cake when she baked, asking about my work as I passed by in the mornings, but I'd always been too busy to appreciate it. I made no attempt at warning her about her ultimate fate, instead, we just talked. She told me stories about her husband, and I just listened intently to each word she spoke. She smiled as the memories flowed back, ones of a life well spent, a happy one. I simply held their hands, or gave them a few words of comfort. I tried getting close to them before their last hour, be it just to strike up a friendly conversation, or to buy them a drink at the local pub, and most left with a look of acceptance, as if they trusted my assurances that everything would be fine. Years went by, a whole decade of helping people pass peacefully to the other side. The power I'd called a curse so long ago, had become a welcome gift. Then, in the late days of last year, as Christmas rolled around once again, me and Anna were wrapping presents for the holiday festivities, and family dinners. I'd gone almost a month without receiving another name, but that would end quickly, when I received another message that shattered my life with these simple words. Saturday, December 7th, 11:43 p.m. Anna Moore. We argued for a bit, and she seemed oddly calm throughout the discussion. In the end, she agreed to get a checkup, if only to calm me down. Of course, with a woman that appeared perfectly healthy, without as much as a cough, the doctors could only run her through the basic tests. To look for anything substantial was a futile task, as most tests would take weeks to return, which was time we didn't have. In the end, we were sent home without a single answer. "Has any of the 100 people survived?" she asked. Without a place listed in the message, it became apparent that she'd meet her fate wherever she was. So, we decided to make the best of what little time we had left. In the following days, Anna stayed brave, putting up a beautiful facade of acceptance and joy. We reminisced about times long since past, looked over photos and held each other for hours. At night, I could hear her cry in the living room, terrified not of what was to come, but of what she'd leave behind. I did my best to comfort her, but there was something hidden under the layers of love and support. Resentment. "I wish you had never told me," she said. "You should have just let me meet my death, ignorant like everyone else." She was right. I'd taken away one of the most beautiful things about life, its uncertainty. The idea of our temporary, fleeting presence here on earth, the fact that any moment might be our last. The thing what makes us so tragically wonderful, and I'd taken it away. Once her time came, it was nearing midnight. We'd both agreed not to mention her rapidly approaching death. She asked if we could go outside, to just look at the night sky one last time, to kiss under the moonlight, like we did on our first day. According to the doctors, my wife had suffered from a deep vein thrombosis. Basically, a clot had formed in her leg, to subsequently break off, traveling all the way up to her lungs, where it caused a pulmonary embolism. It killed her within seconds. My mind raced. It was such a simple, but overwhelming question. What would happen if I said yes? Would I finally be free? Within a second, I got a response: "Who will be next?" Then it clicked, as if the past decade of my life suddenly made sense, or at least partially. Juliet, my first job, had not only been a random death. She'd chosen me as a successor, plunging me into a life she herself had lived. Why she'd chosen me remained a mystery. Maybe we knew each other long ago, met once and the name stuck, or maybe she picked me from a dusty phone book in her attic. Sunday, 8:49 p.m., Hollow Street 7, Alex Moore. Who's next?
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
On the Russian ice road, you always help your fellow travelers, by the city of S. Not in Moscow, of course. Did you know that Moscow's actually pretty warm? There are entire states in America where winters are far colder than anything Muscovites ever have to deal with. No, my wife comes from a tiny town far up Russian north, on the tundra. A dark, gloomy, and a very cold place inside the Arctic Circle, with extremely harsh winters and even harsher people. A place that meets the stereotypes. Urgently getting to Moscow wasn't that hard. There, however, we faced additional difficulties. First of all, apparently I couldn't actually fly to Norilsk with Lana as the city was closed to foreigners. Before we could even process that, we were told that Norilsk Airport was closed for all aircraft due to poor weather conditions and the weather wasn't expected to improve that week. I tried to console Lana as best as I could, but news of her mom getting worse drove her crazy. Soon, Lana suggested an alternative. It was possible to fly to a city a fair bit south of Norilsk which was safe from the storms. For a modest fee, a family friend living there was willing to take a day's journey up the ice road to Lana's hometown. Well, more like a night's journey since according to him, it was better to travel at night by cars' lights than by what passed as daylight. Kolya was supposed to be a few years younger than my wife but looked much older, his skin and posture worn down by the harsh conditions of his homeland. He laughed at our American shoes and coats and said he would pack extra jackets, woolen socks and Valenki for us, just in case. His brother helped load his truck, which looked like it had seen the fall of the Soviet Union, and then Kolya sat down to enjoy a shot of vodka. One for the road. This isn't New York, or even Moscow, she said quietly. People here are a bit behind in terms of DUI. Don't worry, he won't drink enough to get impaired, he's seen that kill people on the road. Well. Have you ever heard wind howling and become unsettled by the sound? Now imagine the same, but in the depths of a black night lit only by your car's headlights. Except for your own vehicle, the world around is silent and devoid of life, frozen until the spring. Not that you can see much through the thick snow that is now the wind's plaything, flurrying around the car, blanketing the windows. Our pace slowed to a crawl as Kolya swore colorfully in Russian. Maybe stop and wait it out, I suggested nervously. We can't, Lana said without bothering to ask our driver. If we stop, there's a good chance the car won't start up again, and we are stuck here waiting for someone to pick us up. And it's been empty today. I opened my eyes to obvious tension in the car. Lana and Kolya were both hunched forward, peering intently through the glass for all the good it did them. Kolya glanced back at me. Kolya murmured something to my wife, too quick and quiet for my distracted mind to decipher. She nodded. What was that? There's a village maybe half an hour up the road, if we keep this pace. We get there and settle down until the morning. Lana grabbed my hand, quick and sudden as a snake. Don't mention the wind. I opened my mouth to comment, and my wife's grip tightened on my arm. In that moment, I knew to keep it quiet. Thank God you people were, the driver began. Get in, idiot. Kolya shouted, and the guy shut up and jumped in. He was just a kid, no older than 20, with dark red hair and a patchy little beard. He looked cold and terrified. I mean the wind and snow, the kid corrected quickly. I had a sudden abrupt feeling that it was too late for that, even as I still had no clue what was going on. We drove on, and the interplay of howls and shrieks outside the car became unbearable in the silence. What's your name, dude? I asked him in my best Russian. He blinked. The car picked up the pace. I looked at Kolya and realized he was absolutely flooring the gas pedal, poor visibility be damned. His truck was lurching along as fast as it could manage in the conditions, and yet the encroaching racket made it obvious we were nowhere near fast enough. Then the car hit something. We were all jerked forward as the truck came to a staggering halt. I hit my temple hard on the back of my wife's seat. Must have hit a chunk of ice or something. Lana's voice sounded strangely muffled. I remember focusing on her lips, and how pale and thin they looked. The dull resounding pain in my head exploded into something hot and overwhelming, and I collapsed into the back seat. He's passed out. Sergei called out. I wanted to correct him, but my voice wouldn't obey me. My lids seemed to weigh a ton each. I could barely open my eyes enough to see the trio of Russians huddled together, the car's flickering light illuminating their pale faces. What now? Sergei asked nervously. What? Kolya grumbled in agreement. Then he reached over and pulled out a rifle, and aimed it at the boy. Sergei whimpered. You know they're out there. Where's the kid? Sergei. Sweetie, I'm getting really worried. You must have hit your head harder than I thought. We gotta get you checked out as soon as we get back to the States. Maybe even a good checkup in Moscow. We made it the rest of the way uneventfully. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law had slipped into unconsciousness before we even set out for our drive, and she passed away several hours after our arrival. Lana didn't even get to say a proper goodbye. She is absolutely devastated right now, so I'm trying my best to focus on comforting her. We're staying here until the funeral, and I can't stay. I'm looking forward to the ride back.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
My friend is camping alone, his texts are starting to scare me. Part 1, by RHA3 Gar. I'm worried about him, so I'll get right to it. The following is our latest text conversation. Dylan, yo, I just parked my car, heading to the trail now. Me, you're crazy man, how cold is it? Dylan, not bad actually. 30s, you gotta come out here soon. It's beautiful. Dylan, nice dude. Real funny. 7:44 a.m. Dylan, dude, are you up? Me, what? 9:19 a.m. Dylan, dude. Dylan, the clothes are modern. It's wearing a nice black jacket and jeans and stuff. Face is kinda scary. Burlap sack with black eyes and a huge smile stitched on. Why is this thing out here? I'm tempted to steal its North Face jacket, lol. 3:33 a.m. Me, I'm sure. Dylan, dude, please, this is serious. I can see their shadow. Me, WTF man, should I call the police for you? Where are you? Latitude and longitude now. Me, Dylan. Dude, please respond and drop a pin so I know where you are. Me, thanks for finally responding. I just about had a heart attack. Barely slept. I was going to call the police or ranger station, but ick where you're at. Dylan, there's something weird though, the scarecrow is right outside my tent. Someone put it there last night while I was asleep. That's the shadow I saw. I don't like this at all. Me, go home man. Seriously. That's messed up even if it's a joke. Dylan, also, I forgot to mention something. Me, what? Me, text me ASAP. That was earlier. Hopefully he gets back okay. 3 dots, it looks like he is responding. 9:13 a.m. Dylan, oh shit, someone slashed my tires, and there's another scarecrow by my car.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead, turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is Horror Slop.
You already know the rules. If you feel like something is behind you, don't look over your shoulder, by Firenish. When I wrote yesterday, about never sleeping with your head towards a door, I admit, I was honestly a little overwhelmed by all the comments and positive responses. I'm glad I've helped so many people stay informed and stay safe, though I hope I haven't scared you off Edinburgh. It's a beautiful city. A lot of you mentioned the rules about spaces behind you. Don't look in mirrors in dark rooms, don't look over your shoulders at what might be following you, don't rush or act afraid when you sense something behind you, and so on. So I thought I'd write something about those rules, to help explain, and to help deter the few of you who think you'll go around glaring defiantly behind you as if you can prove me wrong. A young man, dark-haired, coat turned up against the cold. I approved of the coat, and his sensible woven scarf. And then I saw his shadow become ever so very slightly larger. I saw him again as he hurried round a corner and threw another anxious glance behind him. A pipe was dripping water into the gutter at the corner of the square. Each droplet stood out to me in the darkness, tiny pearls gilded by reflected lamplight. I don't know what George was hearing, but I could tell the rhythm of that drip wasn't entirely natural. Drip drip, drip, drip 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 drip. Pause. Drip drip, drip, drip 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 drip. Yes, And I need you to stop looking behind you." The shadow shrank just a little bit. I hadn't practiced this, I'd never done this before, and my facial expression must have given it away, and the young man noticed. His shadow grew, and this time it wasn't a subtle difference, it wasn't one of those imperceptible differences that you only pick up on if you're me. It looked like someone was shining a torch right under his feet, to cast a shadow that big. The shadow loomed up on the crescent behind George, broken up by the shapes of Edinburgh's typical tall windows and cut off just at the neck by the dark tiles of the roofs. "You're looking behind me," he accused, but he didn't turn around. That was good. I approved of that. Sensible Scarf Boy might have forgotten the rules, but at least he could see it once I reminded him. The thing behind him was substantial enough now that it was casting its own shadow. I prayed he didn't notice. I couldn't make out much from the shadow, but it looked like it had a pretty long knife. "George," was all he offered in response. I suppose that is fair, given how terrified he was. I kept a steady brisk pace up to the front door, shoved George inside and shut the door behind us. I froze. George wasn't supposed to be asking about that. Why would he know about that? So I told him the rules. Not to ever look behind him if he's on a dark street like that. If it's targeted you once, you're more vulnerable. I told him how it progresses. At first it's your shadow. If you don't believe in it, it's not strong enough to do much, or to hurt you. But when you glance behind you, and perhaps you see a leaf stirring in the wind or an oddly shaped shadow, it lends just a little credibility to the idea that maybe there could be, or could have been, something there. That little bit of extra belief still won't give it physical form. But it can nudge things. It could make the air feel warmer on your neck. It could make the street seem quiet, too quiet. It could lengthen your shadow, so that if you turn around and glance at it, something might seem off. You believe something is off, something is dangerous. Perhaps you believe, a little bit, that there might be something behind you. It gets stronger. I told him all this before realizing I had made a terrible mistake. "Is there something behind me?" I asked in the most measured, calm voice I could possibly summon. A book fell on my head. "There is definitely nothing behind you." I could feel the breath on my neck, just as I'd mentioned it. I wished I hadn't used that example. I hate breath on my neck. "Please, look at me." I think in hindsight George's nurse training kicked in. I looked at him, tried to actually stop scanning the empty library aisle for anything to help and looked at him. Right into his eyes. He has, chocolate brown eyes. "There is absolutely nothing behind you. There never has been. You are safe. You are completely safe." I stood up. "There's one last thing you can try, in an emergency. It works best if you trust someone with your life," but George was all I had. I walked towards him, took his hands and pulled him up. I almost slipped his hands out of mine, they were so sweaty. Anyway, that's how I met George. She didn't even look up or notice us as she stumbled past. She'd probably learned by then. Looking the way the tiredness had made her, people who heard her pleas for help would assume she was crazy, a homeless beggar or a drug addict. I knew better, but I also knew better than to try to save her at this point. So, don't glance behind you when you're hurrying home late at night. You already know this rule. You know it for a reason. I'm doing my best to keep you safe. It was risky to write this, and risky to make you believe a little more, so you better have followed all the instructions. Sleep with one side of your bed against the wall. Tell your friends that they shouldn't be glancing over their shoulders, because it'll only make them more scared. And if you get up to use the bathroom and you're still feeling anxious from reading this, don't look in the mirror.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness. I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no. Just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon. And leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.